Thursday, November 13th, 1997. They say the trip from Philadelphia to Fort Dix should take about an hour and a quarter. In fact, it has taken me 61 years. From the day I received my sentence, a merciful 18 months and only a nominal order of restitution, it has been impossible to imagine what it was going to be like. I had not known whether to begin to gird myself, to hunker down and start getting into prison mode, or to simply go on as I had, living day by day, until the time came when I had to self-report at the prison and begin a new, incomprehensible phase of my life. Being utterly unable to conceive what it might possibly be like, I have almost by default opted for the latter. I would just go on day by day and confront it when the time finally came. It is so strange that I could not bring it into context. Prison was always a possibility. From the moment I found out from the phone call from the Daily News reporter that I had been indicted. We'd been away for a weekend, and there was a bland, if intrusive, message tucked among all the others on the answering machine, wondering if you have anything to say about that. I'd spent my whole career, back when I had one, avoiding the press when clients were in trouble. It was reflexive to immediately conclude not to return the call. What the hell did he expect me to say? What do you say? I suppose I had started to think about it then. I had heard the jokes for years that the government could convict a ham sandwich if they wanted. I had done a lot more than the average piece of ham, and I think I knew from the very first call how this story was going to end. My malpractice carrier's attorney had said for years they'll never indict you. They realized it was all her fault. I would like to have believed this, but I knew it wasn't true. I wasn't even sure my lawyer thought it was true. I knew better. My secretary may have borne the heavier load of guilt, but I had crossed some lines, and it wouldn't take a genius to figure that out. If they indicted me, I damn well knew what they had discovered over the last 3 years. I had never tried to hide anything. It was all there in the bank records for anybody who wanted to look, and some people finally had. At the start, prison was just a distant possibility. Maybe it wouldn't come to that. It is one thing to be indicted, enter a plea, hire a lawyer, wait through months and months of motions and delays and calendar changes, and contemplate a distant trial sometime down the road. And quite another to finally face up to facts, plead guilty, and know that prison is just a matter of time. A few weeks, a month at most, until it's the day to report. How can one rationally place oneself in prison, in a cell, before it actually happens? It was so totally at odds with what I had always thought of myself. It takes on so much freight to think that the words convict, felon, ex-con mean out in the world. Everyone all along the way knew the outcome was possible, though only my initial lawyer thought it probable. She always thought I had certainly done so much more for which I could have been indicted. She kept saying my former secretary was in fact an unindicted co-conspirator, that I was either an accessory before or after the fact, so that whatever I had done or not done was beside the point. I was guilty of all of the hundreds of thousands that Chantal had embezzled, so whatever I was immediately charged with was beside the point. I kept thinking it was so odd that thanks to the horrendous overcrowding in the Pennsylvania prison system, that Chantal, facing state charges, I kept thinking it was so odd that thanks to the horrendous overcrowding in the Pennsylvania state prisons, Chantal, facing state charges, was never going to do a day in jail, that she had spent a grand total of 2 hours in custody at the time of her arrest, when she had had the gall or the presence to ask for a Bible so she could read it while she was booked. 2 hours total, and here I was facing 18 months. 13 months inside and 5 months of good time that I would end up spending on supervised release in a halfway house up on Broad Street, preparing for re-entry into polite society in a world I had deserted for decades, floating off in a sea of alcohol. Barbara and I had never actually decided how we would work out the day I was to report. I kept driving the limousine right up to the day before. I said, and I half believed, it was to maximize the money I would be leaving with Barbara. It was also to distract from the horror that was mechanically looming with the certainty of the turning of the gears of the clock. Barbara had appointments booked during the day, and at my noon AA meeting, my sponsor offered to drive me over in the afternoon. I said a muddled goodbye to Barbara when I left for the meeting, making sure I wasn't carrying any money or keys or anything other than my glasses, my driver's license, and a Xerox copy of the order of sentence. We didn't even really say goodbye. There was no way to say goodbye at a time like that. All you can do is just turn around and leave, and hope someday, somehow you'll come back. That there'll be something to come back to. Who knows? No one knows or could know. After the noon AA meeting, my sponsor and his wife and I ate at my least favorite restaurant in Narberth, a kind of seedy health food store with nothing on the menu that I find at all appealing. But then it had to be better than what I had heard about prison food. I had asked a former state senator who had done time for awarding phony, no-show payroll jobs in state government, and who was now making a living writing and advising people on how to do time, what the food would be like. It ain't good, my friend. It ain't good, but it won't kill you. Maybe it was just as well we were eating tofu and damp whole wheat bread sandwiches for my last outside meal. Prison food might actually be better than this. It was hard to converse during lunch. Ron and his wife chattered distractingly, but we all knew what was on tap, and we all kept our eyes on the faded clock on the wall. I didn't want to report late and start off my time in prison in the shoe or something worse. And after dawdling through the last lunch, we finally piled into the car for the drive to New Jersey and into the next chapter of my life. It was fitting that we were going to have to drive through Camden on the way to whatever awaited. Although I had lived within 40 miles of Fort Dix for decades, I had never actually been there and had no idea what to expect. The closest I ever came was representing Guck Kim and his wife and their good quality drugstore in a neighboring town to Fort Dix, where they sold dated merchandise to the soldiers' families on the base. One day, one of the Fort Dix wives came into their little store and slipped, fell, and injured herself on a skim of paper that Guck's daughter had scattered on the floor. Guck professed ignorance of the need for liability insurance and had overcharged and underserved the soldiers' families for the little shop where he was chronically behind in rent. He paid an initial retainer, but at one of the court hearings in the seemingly endless litigation, he suddenly announced that he had decided to pay me the balance of the fee, only if he won the case. Only if he and his wife were found innocent of the negligence they had clearly committed. There were 3 or 4 eyewitnesses to the fact of the spread of the slippery paper scraps his daughter left on the floor. But as Guck put it, If you win, you do your job right and you get paid. If you lose, you no do your job right and you not get paid. How like clients, how like the law this case was. Endless delays, partial hearings, incomplete depositions, evasions, lies, distortions, dissatisfied clients, annoyed judges, and bored clerks. The arbitrators had initially recommended $65,000, and I had gotten it down to $18,000, but Guck was convinced he owed nothing. I wasn't going to get paid another nickel unless I got him off scot-free when he was clearly liable for everything. When the judge heard his understanding of when fees were and were not due, he let me out of the case with the gracious consent of a sympathetic opponent. I could not help but think as we drove over the bridge into New Jersey, to drive past Guck's store, how little I was going to miss this part of my life. The constant, endless dissembling, the fabrication of claims and defenses nobody believed or thought true, the endless expense of time and money as weapons themselves, the constant twisting of facts and issues. My mind turned back to my marriage. What would come of Barbara and me? I had not been able to escape the thought, from even before my collapse, when I first began to see dim, shrouded lights outside the haze of my addiction, that something god-awful had to come out of all of this. How had she stayed with me? Why was she still here? I could not imagine life without her. She was life itself to me. A glorious mix of an almost unique beauty, a deep spiritual core that few people knew she possessed. Fallible, fragile, irrational at times, but strong and so knowing, so wonderful, so caring and so dear. And always there were the eyes, the deep, penetrating, soulful eyes, the hundreds of different smiles, and that laugh, rich, heedless, raucous, that came so freely and so unguarded. Here I was now across the Ben Franklin Bridge and starting down the Admiral Wilson Boulevard. It was gray, overcast, and dismal, close to rain and close to my mood. The notorious Admiral Wilson Boulevard, named after the illustrious commander of the American Atlantic Fleet during the First World War, the fabled commander who never lost a ship, his memory now sullied and defined by a succession of by-the-hour motels, seedy, paint-flaking go-go bars, in one of which Tiny Tim's beloved Miss Vicky had once danced. The Gospel Ministry to the Lost, appropriately located. Discount drugstores, best deals in cars anywhere lots, and standing taller than all the rest in a discordant pure white, the nude two-girl show, nude hot oil wrestling, couch dancing, and private girl shows, 20 lovely ladies waiting just for you, Emporium. Truckers welcome, full-time security parking. And above that, an incongruous billboard of a young man smiling maniacally, bearing rich, full gums, pink and flawless skin, in a joyous athletic leap with a cigarette in hand, all of which smoking would destroy. And down at the bottom of the huge sign, far below the Alive with Pleasure slogan, in barely visible but distinct print, the Surgeon General's warning that smoking will cause lung cancer, emphysema, and heart trouble. Here I was, slowly driving past in choking traffic the shimmering advertisements of dissipation, to serve out 13 months of the last and worst fruits of my own addiction. Soon we had passed all of this and were in a monotonous run of endless small southern New Jersey strip malls, diners, motels with vibrating beds and private VCRs in each room, topless bars and empty stores, past the largest closed landfill in southern New Jersey, towering silently and sordidly over Mount Holly, just to the west of the courthouse where I had been relieved of Guck Kim's fantasy that a good lawyer could twist the law into whatever bizarre result might suit his needs. We began to slip by abandoned farms, disintegrating farmhouses, dreary homes too long unpainted, with gardens untended, and broken plastic gyms and abandoned car hulks that would never run again, scattered in the lawn and saved for no good purpose. After the final turn of the main highway, we drove for the last mile on a military road, past aging officers' quarters, inside low cyclone fences, up to the sign for Fort Dix East. We suddenly came upon strange, sparkling, well-maintained fences 15 feet high, arising out of brown, closely cut grass, topped with cascading rolls of concertina wire. Beyond this were endless rows of red 3-story brick buildings with trim running from dull fading gray to somber dark brown. We had finally arrived. This was FCI Fort Dix, Federal Correction Institution Fort Dix, my new home. At the time, the largest low-security federal prison in the country, carved out of one side of what had once been Army barracks and support buildings. End of section.